All right, it is the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar on Learn to Manage Records Anywhere with Gimmal. Really appreciate everyone joining today. The first thing I want to do is take a second to introduce our speakers. My name is Shana Horka, and I work in product marketing here at Gimmal, and I am joined by our key speaker today, sales engineer Russ Savvy.
Hello, everyone.
So before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping items that I want to go through. We will have a live Q&A after today's session, so please feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar. And at the end, we will answer as many questions as we can. If you have any technical difficulties, please send us a message and let us know so we can help you solve any issues you may be having. All right, so to kick things off, I just have a few slides here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal. Gimmal is a records information management and governance software company that was founded in 2002. We have a client success team and a global network of partners that have been delivering solutions with us for more than 17 years. Our primary technology partners include Microsoft and SAP. Our implementation partners include small specialty SIs with specific areas of expertise, as well as large global SIs and consultants like PwC and Lockheed Martin. And with over 500,000 licensed users and growing, we have a strong community of who we consider some of the best clients in the world. So now let's dive a little deeper into the problem that Gimmal software solves. The reason Gimmal exists is because so many enterprises struggle to manage the sheer volume of information and systems they have. For years, they've been adding business applications and information, but they haven't been able to create a consistent way to manage the life cycle of their information across these systems or dispose of unneeded or outdated information. This makes doing business more difficult, less secure, and less compliant. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive software products include records management, content governance for SharePoint, and document management for SAP. Gimmal's content governance for SharePoint product solves the first hurdle in the records management process by automating the classification and organization of newly uploaded content and then storing that content in its proper location within SharePoint and Office 365. Gimmal's document management for SAP solution easily connects SAP and SharePoint content, data, and processes, putting critical business information right where people work. And finally, Gimmal's records management solution offers seamless integration to manage your information within all of your repositories, not just SharePoint and Office 365, but also file shares, Box, FileNet, Documentum, among others. It manages your content sources consistently from a single dashboard with a central file plan builder that ensures your organization's most valuable information is managed properly and with the correct retention schedule. Gimmal's records management will give your organization a unified view and access point to your entire information inventory. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Russ so he can go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Shana. Just one more slide I wanted to go through. Today's demonstration, I'll be walking through a demonstration of our product, GRM, Gimmal Records Management. And again, our solution sits outside of your record document repositories, and we're able to manage that information and take action. So we're going to be walking through a few use cases where we can store documents in a few repositories that I've set up. And again, just to point out that, again, we can sit out and we can manage your records and content regardless of the repository. And here are just a few of the connectors that we have today around SharePoint, O365, OpenText, Documentum, Box, Dropbox, FileNet, and file shares. And I'll be getting a bit deeper into a few of these during the demonstration. So with that, I'm going to end the slideshow. And now what you're seeing is our Gimmal Records Management product, otherwise referred to as GRM. And this primary landing page, what you see here, allows records managers to basically go into an area where they can see the state of records across the enterprise. So regardless of where those records are stored, we have that ability to crawl across repositories, manage that information, and actually take action. So again, this initial landing page, what you see here, is designed for your records managers. And just to kind of show you a couple of features of this landing page, we have a series of pie charts, again, live, that basically feed live information based on our content connectors that we have in place. For the demonstration today, I'm going to be focused on 3 repositories. I have a physical records connector. Again, as I hover my mouse over this piece of the pie chart, I can see those records that I've effectively captured in that repository. I'm going to also be showing SharePoint. So again, I can see that I have some records from the main dashboard here that I've recognized, classified some content based on a SharePoint repository, as well as file shares. By hovering my mouse, I can see the corresponding number of records that I've classified there. As I go across the middle of the pane here, I can see the top record classes that I've identified based on my file plan. I can see that I've captured some financial records based on the records code that I see here. And again, I have some other financial records. And as I go around the chart here, I can see the various top record classes that I've captured and the corresponding number of records. And off to the right, we have what we call our classified versus unclassified. And what this simply means is anything that falls under classified, I've successfully tied that back to a record class that I've created within my file plan. Unclassified can mean quite a few things. These are going to be documents that we have not been able to recognize based on maybe it's some metadata or keyword data that we were looking for in order to appropriately classify that content, or maybe it's a location. In any event, any item that shows up as unclassified can signal a records manager to take further action on. Those are documents and records that we cannot recognize, but we know if we have collected information about that content. We just have not been able to place it under a records category. Again, some additional information that we place on the main monitoring page. Again, this is all real-time information, so just the state of the enterprise can be, you can see right away based on the pie charts. However, we include some additional information as well. For one, we list out all the record classes that you have defined, and again, by simply hovering the mouse, we can see the number of corresponding documents that we've been able to classify. So again, these are the record classes I have in my demo system and what I've been able to see across regardless of what repository they sit in right now. Another area that we list out are our most recently classified records. So here, and again, one important point here, we're leaving your content and your records where they live today. So if users are storing your documents inside of file shares or SharePoint, we're leaving that content where it lives today. Our content connector will go in and we collect information about that content, and we can actually take action. So just to show a couple of other areas where that information comes in really handy, within recent records, we can see various records being captured across physical, my file shares, SharePoint. We can drill in deeper and see details about this particular record. We can see that this particular example, we've been able to tie this document back from SharePoint to a record class, financial management. We've been able to store the title of the file. We even provide a link. So if the records manager has access to the underlying repository, they can actually view the document from here. So GRM, as we call it, records managers can work within the central hub without ever having to leave this interface. So no longer will you be required to jump out to your file shares or out to SharePoint or out to Documentum. All of your from your file plan through taking action on those documents can all be done from within our central hub. So we like to think of things as trying to automate things as much as possible when it comes to auto classification, when it comes to applying a life cycle. Again, back to this example here where we've identified this record class, we also provide a visual representation of the life cycle that belongs to this particular record. In this example, we've locked down this document as a record, so we have that ability to take action. In this case, upon a record declaration, we can make that file immutable, again, regardless of where that resides. So if it's out on a file share, SharePoint, even your physical repository, we can actually perform a record declaration and lock that down, which essentially makes it so that the file is not editable. It's immutable, so no changes can be made until that life cycle has been met. In this case, the life cycle for this particular record, we're going to keep this for 5 years, and then it's going to go through a disposition process. Again, just one example of what we're able to do around managing your records in place. So how is all of this done? We have an area where we can create our file plan that will actually go out and control what we're able to go out and classify, what we're able to go out and apply a retention schedule to. So let's go ahead and take a look out at as far as how all this is created, how we're able to manage all of this. So we have an area called Plan, which allows for records managers to import and configure your file plan, which is basically automatically your record classes along with your associated retention schedules. In my example here, I just have a functional record schedule set up where I have my functional areas such as finance, human resources, technology. And I'm going to focus on finance today, in particular invoices. I'm going to go ahead from an end user standpoint. I'm going to upload into the various repositories invoices and show how we can go out and auto classify that content based on classification rules that we set up around this particular record class. So as I hover my mouse, you can see that we have a hierarchical view, so we can create record classes, and we can go down any number of levels to manage your record classes. We can also ingest your retention schedule via an Excel spreadsheet. So again, a lot of this does not have to be created by hand. We can automate that process by ingesting via an Excel spreadsheet. The example I'm going to primarily focus on today, financial transaction records. We can see that I've set some classification rules and a life cycle associated with this record class. We go a little deeper. I'm going to go ahead and look at the classification rules that I've set up for my financial transaction records. And what you'll see right away is that I can set rules up that go across various repositories. In this example that I've set up, I'm using a rule to go out to SharePoint, and anything that uses any one of these variables, we're going to be able to classify this automatically without the end user even knowing that they're participating in records management. I also have another rule set up where it could also be a physical record. It could be a physical record where someone has utilized a value called content type, and that value equals finance transaction. And lastly, I created another rule to look out across my file shares, and I'm looking at a file system, and I'm looking for a particular directory at a particular level called finance invoices. Now, the classification rules can be set up any way of how your repositories are set up. It doesn't have to be set up based on folders or content types. It can be based on any way that you have your repository set up today. With SharePoint, we see things like keywords, we see things like retention labels. We can certainly utilize any of those property values as well. So again, based on these classification rules, I'm going to go through a few end user scenarios as far as from an end user perspective where I can go and upload documents, create documents in these various repositories. And from a records management standpoint, we're going to classify that content automatically without the end user even knowing that they're participating in records management. So what I'd like to do first, as part of Gimmal's records management, we also have a physical records component, so we can also manage paper as well as alongside your electronic records. So for the first example, I'm simply just going to go into my physical records repository. And if you're not familiar with physical records, it's basically just a physical a representation of how your paper records are stored. And all I'm simply going to do here, based within our interface, I'm going to view my assets, and I'm going to create a box of documents around my financial transactions. Again, this would just be an end user taking on the role of uploading a box, and I'm actually going to generate a barcode with this as well. And I'm simply going to say, hey, this is just a invoice, box of invoices from 2015, and I'm going to store some metadata with that as well. So we have the ability for our physical records to actually store metadata values. So in this case, I'm just going to assign it finance transaction, and I'm going to call this a record and hit create. So based on an end user creating this asset behind the scenes, and we'll see this a little bit later, we're going to be able to apply auto classification rules to this and apply a retention schedule to that box of paper. So that's just one example as far as how users may interact with a repository and how we can manage that behind the scenes. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to jump out to another repository. In this case, I'm going to jump out to file shares. So file shares, again, folks store documents, we find records there, and file shares are very limited on how we can store files, how we can perform records declaration too. But from Gimmal's records management perspective, we can actually perform records management capabilities even if it's out on a file share. So in this example, I'm going to go out to my agency records for finance, and I happen to have some invoices out in this repositories. And again, just one example, I have various invoices associated by year. If I drill into one of these folders, I'll just go into 2016, I can see I have some files. Unbeknownst to the end user, as they upload documents into these file shares, we can apply classification to this content automatically as well. Another feature we open up is the ability to see information on that record based on the repository. So in this case, I'm out in a file share. I can click the Manage Record, and I can see that any record that's stored out in these locations can also be assigned to a record class automatically. And we've actually taken this, managing this content one step further. We actually have these particular files on a legal hold. But again, the same information from back out of the dashboard, the records manager view, we can open up this capability from an end user perspective as well. So they can see record details. Again, end users in this case can simply work within their environments by uploading documents into your current existing repositories, and we can apply these rules behind the scenes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to upload a file to show you how this works in real time. I have a folder called 2015. So I'm simply going to act as an end user, and I'm going to upload a folder to that specific area. So this could be an example of an end user working locally, or they've received an invoice that needs to be uploaded to a repository. So in this case, I have a few examples. I'm going to take this invoice for Autorama. I'm going to move it to this folder. Again, not much changes here, just a typical file share experience end user. They're uploading a document, and we've loaded that into a folder called 2015. Upon looking at this a little bit further, again, I can go to the document and look at Manage Record, and we can see that this can be brought under Records Management Control immediately. In this case, we simply copied an invoice up to a finance area out on a network file share, and just by dropping that file into this folder location, we've been automatically able to apply a record class based on those classification rules that I've set up that's looking across my file shares. And again, it will apply the associated lifecycle to this as well. So again, real-time capturing this information about this content as we store it into a repository. And this will be the same across any repository that we manage. So again, at the very beginning, looking at the content connectors, this could be a file share, it could be physical, SharePoint, Box, any repository that you utilize today. So what I'd like to do now, again, just showing, another use case of various repositories that you may utilize today. Excuse me. What I'd like to do now is jump out to a SharePoint repository. Again, our content connectors work with various flavors of SharePoint. So we work with SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2016, SharePoint Online. And again, based on how you've configured your SharePoint environments, we can take advantage of that. You may be utilizing SharePoint in a number of ways. You could be utilizing something called drop zones, where you can simply drop documents onto a zone and we can collect metadata and we can classify content that way. You could use folders within SharePoint. We can certainly store documents that way. And we can take advantage of permissions, your current configuration, how you've set those environments up today. So again, we don't require you to change your repositories in any way to support our solution. You can utilize SharePoint any way that you like. In this case, what I've done, again, I've just set an example up. I've set up a SharePoint document library with I've set some corresponding folders to capture invoices in this case. And I'm going to use the native upload capability within SharePoint. I'm simply just going to upload a document. Again, to those folks out there that use SharePoint, this will look very familiar to you. I'm just going to go out to my documents. Again, I'm just going to upload a document in this case. This is just using SharePoint out of the box. I'm going to click OK. And based on how you've configured your document library within SharePoint, you're going to be prompted for some metadata in this case. So I have a couple values here that are required, such as customer name. We're simply going to go in and select a customer name, click OK, and we're going to agree that this is a transaction type, and we're going to leave this as the content state of record and check this in. So again, once again, the end user does not have to change the way that they work with their documents. They can continue working the way that those repositories have been set up. And once again, we can take action on information once it's been uploaded. We could set, in this case, we could declare this as a record at some point based on a metadata column field. We could take action on any other field for that matter, as far as if we wanted to declare this as a record upon someone uploading this to a SharePoint document library in this case. After a few minutes, we will be able to classify this content. Again, the previous example, physical records, file shares, again, based on the information that we're able to collect, we can analyze that information and take action based on the classification rules that we've set up. In this case, we're inside of SharePoint. We do open up a very similar capability of the managed record capability. So again, if we go to the managed record capability, if the content connector has reached out, and it looks like it has in this case, we can see that just by uploading this document within the SharePoint document library, we've been able to apply a corresponding record class. Just based on that end user uploading a document, not having to change much as far as how they work with these repositories today. One thing you will notice is we're not requiring the end user to classify the content. So a lot of times we see that documents are uploaded from an end user perspective, but we still depend on that end user to classify the content. But we're eliminating that completely. We're automating that process of being able to classify this behind the scenes. So one last example of how we can capture content. Again, we've gone over a physical record example. We've gone over a file share example, SharePoint. I wanted to show email because we get a lot of questions around email a lot of times. So what I'm going to do here is open up Outlook, and we have an email that's already here. So we can do a couple of things through what we call an Outlook plugin. We can process emails through email rules as they come in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to send an email and process this on the fly. So behind the scenes, I will send an email to this email account. And what we should see is an email arrive. And what we can do is based on how you have your exchange, how you have your email set up, we're going to be able to process incoming email automatically. So we see that an email has arrived in our inbox, weekly meeting setup. And through a plugin, what we can do is we can automatically archive this content to a managed repository. In this example, I'm pushing emails behind the scenes to a SharePoint repository in which GRM is managing behind the scenes. So based on, in this case, an end user uploading a document or an email arriving in the inbox automatically, we can push that to a SharePoint site, and it can start being managed immediately based on the end user not having to do anything. However, we can also have users interact with email for when they may want to store an attachment as a record. So this first example, weekly meeting, was automatically sent down to a SharePoint archive called Capstone Executives, where we can automatically take metadata information such as the subject, anything centric to that email, such as who it was sent to, who it was from, what the subject was. And we can also process emails on a manual basis. So in this case, I have an attachment from an invoice that I'd like to store as a record inside of SharePoint. So we can also provide a mechanism for users to store documents directly into SharePoint. So in this case, I'm storing just attachments from the email. I'm going to click the icon to store the document, and I'm simply just going to go down to the corresponding folder where I'm storing these inside of SharePoint. And in this example, this is a financial transaction. I'm simply going to store that in the 2015 folder. I'm going to click OK. If there's any required metadata, I will be prompted for that. So even though I'm inside of an email, I will be prompted for metadata based on where I'm storing this document. So in this case, I'm being prompted for customer name. I'm simply going to choose the company for this, and I'm just going to choose the right customer. And I'm going to choose that this is an invoice. Everything else looks good. I'm going to save and close. So just based on that interaction from within Outlook, we're able to allow an interface that can look at documents that are stored inside of SharePoint, as well as store documents directly to SharePoint from within Outlook. So again, I can go out to those areas, and within a few seconds, we'll see those corresponding areas as far as where we've stored those documents. For the attachment, I just stored over inside of SharePoint. From the attachment, we can see that the Light Experts, the attachment has now been stored out in SharePoint. I can access that from within Outlook, as well as the prior document that we uploaded to SharePoint. The invoice for Aquaman is there as well. So I have access to documents that are currently there, as well as information or records that I need to store directly from Outlook. I have that capability as well. So based on all those scenarios, again, physical file shares, uploading a document into SharePoint, and then of course working from email, regardless of how those documents are being captured from a records management standpoint, we can have a view regardless of how those end users are interacting with those documents. So back out of the dashboard, we can see within the recent records that we've captured each one of those records that we've gone through, and as far as those examples. We can see that the physical record that we captured earlier on that we created has now been classified. Again, we see the invoices 2015 is now here. We can see the file share that I stored as now sitting. We're now managing that content. We've declared that as a record, and we're now managing the life cycle until it's no longer required. We're going to keep that locked down until we no longer need it. We can see that the Aquaman SharePoint file that we captured is now within our recent records that we see. Similar to the file share, again, we're applying the same policy that we're just going to lock this down, and we're going to keep it until it's no longer required by the business. And again, we have the two examples from email as well. One of the values we captured as a capstone executive. And another area, just to show you what type of information that we're automatically able to capture, if we go down to the properties area here, it'll show you a running list of all the elements that we captured within a particular document from a repository. For the email that was captured automatically, you can see that we capture things like create date, the file size, modified, the repository, the content type. All of this was captured automatically behind the scenes, didn't require any intervention from the end user outside of a typical upload. Outside of that, we're able to store additional information in which we can take action. We can create classification rules around. All of this is captured. We manage this automatically alongside the record that we're managing. This particular record, you can see that we picked up some email elements as well. Since it is a capstone record, we showed that it was who it was to, the name of the email, along with several other values that are related to the email message. The end user in this case would not have to move from this interface. Again, based on the various repositories that we went out and captured from, I can see all of that same information from within this interface. So what I'd like to do next is show a couple of other areas as far as what we're able to do. We already went over pretty extensively as far as what we're able to do with the monitoring dashboard and how we can set our file plan up to create classification rules, retention rules. I wanted to show a couple other areas as well as far as what we're able to do. We also provide search capabilities across all your repositories. So again, this just doesn't go against SharePoint or file shares. Based on any repository that we're managing, we're able to search across those repositories, almost like a federated search, regardless of where that information is stored. So this first search area, we can search by individual files. So just by simply typing out words and letters, I can search by title and look for individual files across all repositories, regardless of where they're stored. We can also see representation visually as far as if that's actually on a legal hold or if it has been declared as a record. And again, we get the same common record details. We can also take action on an ad hoc basis if we have to reclassify the document, undeclare it. Records managers have all of these capabilities at their fingertips, and again, without having to leave this interface. We're also able to search, again, this is just one way that we can provide a search across individual files, which can be by title, unique identifier, or my location. We can also provide a records manager view based on the record classes that we have set up. So this could be based on a kind of like a folder type view, which we can go in and look at various files that have been classified. We can also search by cases. So we also have the capability to group files together automatically. So this could be one case could be maybe we search, maybe we store files by employee number. So we can search by a particular employee. And again, we can go drill down and look at all those files that are part of an employee files. In this case, Barbara Owens or Charles Davis, I should say. I could go look at those files as well. We can also look at groupings of files, any way that we've grouped the files that we want to store those as a case within GRM. So this one example, like I've shown here, could be by employee. It could be by contract number. It could actually be by a year. In the case of invoices, I group my invoices by year. So if I search by a particular year, I can see all financial transactions by the year 2016. The examples I've been using from an end user perspective as far as 2015, storing from various repositories, we store the physical record, the file share. If I look at 2015, we can see all of those records that I uploaded previously a few minutes ago as far as the physical record, the SharePoint, the file that was uploaded by the file system. I'm grouping all of these files together as financial transactions for the year 2015. Again, regardless of where those documents are being stored. We also have the ability to apply legal holds. So part of that ability to search across repositories, search by cases. We do have the ability to apply legal holds across repositories as well. I've set up a few legal holds here off onto the side. One of the legal holds I have set up as a temporary hold for the employee Rest Savvy. We're able to set up our legal holds, legal hold rules. So again, it can be something very simple based on an employee number, anything that belongs to Rest Savvy. We can, in this case, store those on a legal hold. We can also show the documents that have been placed on legal hold. In this case, it's just one document. I have another legal hold set up across my financial transactions for a particular year. And if we look at this particular legal hold rules, I've used just a very simple attribute, anything stored in the folder equals 2016. And if we look at those legal holds, we can see that all of these documents have been placed on legal hold. Again, very accessible from one location, the ability to search in this case, and we also have the ability to create legal holds as well as create those rules to pull those documents into a legal hold. When documents are placed on hold in our solution, it's very similar to a declared record. The file is immutable. It cannot be edited or deleted. Once that legal hold has been lifted, that file can be dispositioned as needed based on the retention schedule. So what I'm going to go to now, again, we've gone through quite a few areas as far as what we're able to do as far as monitoring, search, our file plan. What happens when an item is up for disposition? So we have the ability to, just to jump over to our retention, back to our file plan for a second. So we have the ability to not only classify content, we have that ability to maintain the retention schedule or life cycle. So we have the ability to manage your life cycle based on a common date, such as a create date or a modified date. And we can even use date properties off of any keyword attribute that you've utilized inside of SharePoint or any other repository that can take advantage of keywords, contract end date. We have something called triggers called event triggers as well, which we can trigger retention based on an event. An event in some cases can be something that's unforeseen in the future. It could be an employee separation, or maybe it's a contract end date, or maybe it's a it's a project close date. So we have that ability to manage retentions based on an unforeseen event in the future. And we also can manage triggers retentions based on a rule. A rule can be based on a metadata value, such as a content state equals record. Or it could be, a rule based on a date and ensuring that a piece of metadata has been appropriately populated in order to trigger an event. We have that ability to do events, dates, or rules. We have the flexibility to create any type retention schedule. Regardless of the repository, we can place any time threshold based on your retention. It could be days, months, or years. And we can perform things such as, items such as cutoff dates. Maybe it's once a year that you review your files that are up for disposition, or maybe it's once a month or, twice a year. We have the flexibility to create, any number of triggers, retentions, as well as life cycles. And life cycles are just a combination of the various retention schedules that we've created. So what I'd like to do now is to kind of show you what happens when an item is up for disposition. And, typically, again, we have retention based on years, it could be months. But I'm going to go ahead and force a retention in this case, just so that we can see what it actually looks like. So I'm actually going to create what we call an event occurrence. And going through this is what we're able to do is create an event that occurs that we can basically control from our interface, and it will go out and basically place a group of records on apply retention to those records. So what I'm going to do here, event occurrences, I'm going to create an event. And in my case, I only have created 2 events. I have one called an employee separation, one's called no longer required. And if you recall, for the invoices that I've uploaded, I basically have a retention, lock down those records, keep them indefinitely until they're no longer required by the business. So I'm going to create an event stating that these items are no longer required by the business. I have the flexibility of placing any date in here. This will take the date stamp of this particular event. I'm going to keep today's event date of 12/17. And then I have some flexibility here as far as where I want to apply this event. Do I want to go against a specific case file? or records with a particular value, or any record across any repository. So I have a lot of flexibility here as far as where I want this event occurrence, what documents I want this event occurrence to occur against. So in this case, I'm just going to select the specific case file, and I'm going to select the 2015 financial transaction. So what's going to happen here, excuse me, is once this event is created, it's going to find all 2015 financial transactions, and it's going to state that these are no longer required by the business, and it's going to serve this up as a notification in my inbox for approval. So I'm going to go ahead and create this. And again, this will be a combination of all files stored for 2015. It could be for an individual file, but in this case, we're going to look for all records based on that transaction year of 2015. And we'll see a notification when that item has been served up. And in the meantime, I wanted to show a couple other features based on real-time information, as far as information that we can collect, that we can actually report on in real time. The dashboard allows a visual representation of that real-time information being classified and how the enterprise looks, the state of the enterprise as far as when it comes to classification of records. What I'm going to do now is jump over to reports. We include a number of reports out of the box. So all of the reports you see here are included right out of the box. And all of these reports, when generated, are generated real time. As you can see, there are a number that you can see here. Some are very record-centric, some are not. I have a couple records here at the bottom, volume by record class of repository. I'll click on this record as an example by viewing that report. This is a record volume by record class of repository. So basically, based on the repositories I have set up, I have SharePoint, physical, and file shares in this case, it's going to look at all of the record classes that I have set up and the corresponding repository as far as the number of records in each of those respective record classes. So again, we store a lot of information about that content that we're crawling. All of that information is available to report on. And we include a number of reports out of the box. You can also create reports on a custom as needed as well. So you can, our solution is based on SQL database. So if you have a report writer that you utilize today, you could certainly utilize that against our database as well. A few of the other reports that we have, again, scroll down a little bit more, we have something called volume by record class and file type. Again, looking at this report, we can look across the various file formats that we store. And again, very similar to the prior report, except this report, we're just showing the file extension based on those record classes. Just to go through a few more that are very beneficial. All of them are beneficial, but a few of my favorites. We have the holds for legal case. So if you recall, I set the legal hold up for transactions for the year 2016. We look at the legal holds for a legal case, view the report. We can see all the legal cases that I have set up. We click on the legal case for the financial transactions for 2016. I'm gonna go ahead and preview that. It's just a running list of all of the documents that are placed on hold. Not only are we able to generate a report real time against your documents that you're managing across repositories, we can interact with reports, zoom in, zoom out. We can also export reports out to a more familiar file format, such as Adobe PDF, Excel, TIFF, just to name a few. Another very valuable report for records managers are approaching phase expiration for record classes. So as notifications are going out, we also have that ability to report ahead of time, and we can provide that report out to department owners to let them know that files are coming up for disposition. So just to show you how a few of these work, basically we can view a report. We'll show a running list of all the record classes that have a potential items coming up for disposition. We can click on those records that are coming up. In this case, I'm going to select my financial management administrative records in this case, select a date. You can report on today's date. In this case, I'm not showing any records coming up for disposition. However, you can report on any future time as well. So if I go out as far as 2030 and go in and look at my preview, I can see that I have a running list of all those files, which list out details as far as the location, origination date, the expiration date. And again, any one of these reports can be generated on the fly In this case, I've generated a report in a PDF format. So again, all from within the web browser, all of these capabilities can be performed, including generating reports and exporting those out to a more familiar format. I'm going to jump back out to the monitor screen to see what's going on with my event. And as sometimes occurs on a real-time demonstration, things are taking a little while to process. So I'm going to go ahead and process one more of these just so that you can see what an actual disposition looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and force this item for a disposition and show you what these look like. Couple areas to show as well. Once an item has been dispositioned, or as actually is up for disposition, we'll get the item will be reflected here in the inbox. And again, once we approve that disposition, we actually remove, not only do we manage that content where it lives today, we actually can dispose of that file where it resides today. So regardless of where that is stored, again, file shares, SharePoint, once an item comes up for disposition and we're approved that, we will actually remove that file from where it resides today. And we support some areas such as once it has been removed, we can report on that information, as well as we can create disposition receipts such as a destruction certificate. We can provide, we can archive the property information. So once an item has been dispositioned, we also have that ability to provide a receipt to go back in time to show records that have been removed for that time. We have a notification that has showed up. We should be getting another one as well, but based on the record that I forced through a disposition process. This is what the inbox looks like. We can send notifications out to various approvers, so it's just not a one approval process. We could send this out to multiple, it could require multiple approvers based on your requirements. So it could go out to a business owner, maybe a business owner manager, and then ultimately it may go back out to the records manager to approve. Upon getting a notification based on that final approval, the content or record in this case will be removed based on where that is stored. So SharePoint, in this case of SharePoint, we will bypass the recycle bin. It will be removed. Before you approve, we provide additional details. So if you did have to get to the details or the audit trail, or if you had to get to the properties before performing that approval, all of that information appears at your fingertips before ultimately you approve or dismiss a request for a records disposition in this case. I'm going to go ahead and click approve and confirm. And just based on that approval, that content will be removed based on where it resides, in that case, SharePoint. One other report I wanted to also show in regards to destruction certificates, we do get this question quite a bit. Once something has been removed, what does that look like? So I do have a few examples of the report destruction certificate records. If we view that report, again, we can report on any disposed date. This serves well for audits, or if you have to show defensible destruction of any of your content. We can go to an actual date, click preview, and this is kind of what our destruction certificates looks like. It will actually show the date, the record class that the files belong to, as well as the unique identifiers, the title of the file, and the unique ID, as well as the location of where that record was removed from. So again, defensible destruction, and also able to support that based on reporting destruction certificates. Will support any type audit or anything that you have to go through where you have to show items have been disposed of from a particular date. We can also archive your property information as well, audit trail history. I may not have pointed this out earlier. We do maintain an audit trail for all records that we manage. So again, we can retain this information even after the item has been dispositioned as well. So I know we're getting somewhat close to the top of the hour. I wanted to, from a demonstration point, again, I just wanted to touch on a lot of the high-level items as far as what GRM offers. And at this point, Shayna, I'm going to bring the PowerPoint presentation back up and get us to the point of where we were as far as questions and answers.
Great, thanks, Russ. Thanks for the demonstration. Now, if anyone has any questions, feel free to submit them because we're going to jump into the Q&A portion. Also, you're going to see a survey pop up on your screen. If everyone can just take a quick second and answer those questions. And after the Q&A, we're going to go through the results of the survey as a group. All right, so in order that they were received. The first question is, would the Gimmal product completely supersede the SharePoint records and information management tools currently available? For example, labels, retention policies, or would an organization mix and match features from each? Put in another way, is there any current functionality with SharePoint records management tools that is not done more effectively with Gimmal?
Great question. We are able to work with your environments, including SharePoint Online, SharePoint, regardless of how you've set those up. So if you have a strategy in place where you're utilizing retention labels, those type things, we can certainly take advantage of those and take over those capabilities as far as what you have in place today. What we often do is we extend those capabilities as far as what O365 offers today, and in some cases, a more simplistic way to manage that content, but we can certainly take advantage of how you're utilizing those environments today. O365 does do a few more things above folder creations, metadata, and content types where you can utilize retention and sensitivity labels. And we can certainly take advantage of that information to perform records classification as well as retention on those records as well.
Awesome. And the second question is, do you have Canadian distribution? Is it available in French and English?
It is. So we do have it available in French as well as English to answer that question. Yes.
Great. The next question is, how long is information retained after a record is deleted?
So that is really up to you. So basically GRM, we can simply disposition a record or non-record, and we can get rid of the record and have no information belonging to that, no longer storing that information. However, we do have an option where if you want to archive that information about the record, even after it has been removed, we can store that information indefinitely as long as you would like to keep that. So it's really based on how long your requirements, how long your need to keep that for. Again, we're not storing the actual record or document, just the information about that record.
Great. And the next one is, can legal holds be applied to across physical as well as electronic records managed?
You sure can. So our federated approach, again, everything you see from a classification, retention, legal holds can be applied to physical as well as electronic. So those same physical records can be managed alongside, as well as when it comes to legal holds, we can apply those holds across physical as well as electronic.
Great. And the last question is, can you set up multiple approvals for a disposition action?
You can. And just to that point, we can set notifications up against any action. So it can be a record declaration, it can be a transfer. But to that point, yes, we support multi-level approvals. So basically it works in stages. So if you have a level 1 approval, level 2, level 3, so on, we do support that. And it could be approval groups or individual users. You can configure those to match your requirements as needed.
Awesome. So it looks like we have most of the poll questions in. Go ahead and share those results with you all. Okay, so the first one, what pains are you currently experiencing with your records management process? Most people said physical and electronic records are managed separately.
Yes, we see that quite a bit. We see just legacy systems. We see folks that have started managing electronic records, and however they've there's been acquired a physical record solution along the way, and they're managed. There's not one solution that's going across both of those. So we do see that quite a bit. Again, as you can see, that we have that ability to manage both alongside one another. So that's a big issue right offhand that can be addressed with a solution such as GRM.
Hey, the next one is, which of the following below technologies does your organization use to store and generate content? Most of the people said Office 365. Is that kind of what you're seeing too, Russ?
Yes, we're starting to see that move. 3, 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago, we did see more of the legacy type systems. Reality is, we see folks have more than one repository. But again, as part of that conversation, we're seeing a lot of folks taking that cloud initiative, utilizing Office 365, as well as having other repositories. But we're definitely seeing that move where folks are taking advantage of that platform.
Okay, the next one, how often does your organization rely primarily on end users to supply metadata to digital content? So a decent amount of people said never, which is that good? Is that, some people said always and some people said usually. So what do you think about that, Russ?
We do see it quite a bit. So again, as part of the legacy systems, that sometimes we come in to answer the questions around, how do we get a grasp on records across repositories? We're finding out a lot of the older legacy systems, in particular, file shares were somewhat limited with what we can do as far as metadata. But even in the cases such as SharePoint or Documentum and FileNet, we're finding that somewhat limited as far as applying that keywords of what has been done to those repositories. So we as much as we'd like to see usually as far as that information architecture in place, we don't see it as often as we like. So that typically is what we see across in the marketplace.
Okay, and the last one is your organization planning to improve records management processes over the next 18 months? A lot of people said, I'm not sure.
Yes, a lot of times we see folks are, again, most folks have more than one repository. So again, a lot of times forced to work with records management within those repositories. So the technology is fairly new. We are definitely seeing folks wanting to make a change as far as getting a grasp over how we manage those repositories, today. So we're definitely seeing a move towards it. More information is being created every day. So we definitely see the trend of people wanting to get a grasp over that content. We see several federal government initiatives, which are filtering through state, local, federal, and we're starting to see a lot more, of course, out in the commercial market as well around GDPR and other directives that are out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Russ. If there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's session. Give a couple minutes back to you guys. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And if you'd like a personalized demo of our software, please feel free to either email Russ or myself. Our contact information is on the screen. Or you can go through Gimmal's website or email info@gimmal.com. And for those who are interested, we're going to send this recording out to everyone within 24 to 48 hours. So thank you, everyone, and hope you have a good rest of your day.